Welcome to Paradigm Shifts with your host, Kayshia Kruger. As an organization development practitioner and executive coach, I work with leaders to create positive changes in the workplace using behavioral science. And here, we're on a mission to rethink the way we work, lead, and ultimately live. So, let's unpack light bulb moments for paradigm shifts within your workplace and beyond. Are you ready for a shift? Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Paradigm Shifts podcast. Today, we are going to dive into an exploration of the mind's power and just how it shapes our realities, both personally, but also professionally. I'm so excited to talk about the impact of imagery, imagination, and mental rehearsal. And joining us today is Marianna Lead, a master certified coach, educator, and founder of Goal Imagery Coaching Academy. She has extensive experience in coaching and mentoring, and she's going to help us bridge the powerful mental tools to our professional lives. So really excited to have you here. Thank you so much, Marianna.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely. So Marianna, you've worked with countless leaders across various industries. I want us to start with imagination, a tool that's usually associated with creativity, but less so with leadership, even though we have studies that find that creativity and leadership are super critical. Creativity is a superpower for leaders. So how can leaders use their imaginative abilities to inspire, align their teams with the broader organizational goals?
Yes, well, thank you for that question. I don't think that it's possible to be a true leader if you don't have a vision. Because without a vision, where are you taking people who is going to be following you? There's no reason, there's no purpose, there's no passion, right? I mean, we have research now, a lot of it, that emotions are contagious, right? So how are you going to give that emotion to others? How are you going to spread that passion if you don't have it yourself? I mean, you can do like a rah-rah-rah speeches, but if you don't feel it, if you don't believe it, people are going to pick up on that and they're not going to follow you. And so I think it's really important to have a vision and to have a clear vision and yet be flexible enough to allow opportunities to come in. So maybe you have a vision, but maybe the reality is not going to pan out exactly as you plan. So you have to be open, and yet you have to have some kind of a vision with a spine. You have to have some non-negotiables and negotiables within your vision. And that takes imagination. You can't imagine, you can't know about you can't even decide what you really want on the menu. Like if you go to a restaurant and you look at the menu, you can't even decide what you're going to have unless you visualize, unless you imagine what it's going to taste like, right? So it's kind of similar.
Such a great analogy for visualizing and how clearly that plays a crucial role in shaping that vision. I would love to hear more about how leaders can use that imaginative ability to kind of set them up for that effectiveness, for that success. So I walk into the restaurant, I have a vision for what I want to eat. Well, how does that really play out?
Well, you may not even know what you want to eat, right, until you see the menu. And, right, I think there are so many tools for creating goals, so many tools for project management, just so many tools and templates for every single phase of leadership, and so many studies on leadership. Like when you Google leadership strength, you're going to come up with documents anywhere from 10 to 1,000 leadership strengths. And it becomes really overwhelming. But it boils down to finding something that's unique to you. Because your personality is going to feed the idea behind your business. I mean, this is why Apple became so popular, because someone brought their personality into it. And they said, well, we wouldn't care if we are more expensive than other brands. we're going to promote freedom and creative choices. And so it became a status symbol. Well, I have a Mac. I know you have a Mac, right? It became something that people want regardless of comparison charts. And I think that that's what real leadership is. Find something that you resonate strongly with. When I'm talking to people who are setting up their businesses and thinking through, often enough, the consideration goes to what are they going to think? People who are looking from outside in, how attractive this idea is. And so even though it's important, but I think it's step 2, it's not a step 1. I think first you have to figure out what you want, and then you strategize how to make it possible and appealing, right? But first, so because you can't match it to other opinions, because there's going to be always someone who's going to not like it.
Such a powerful statement that you say. And what I'm hearing you share is authenticity and having a genuine understanding of yourself, so that bringing that self-awareness forward is what will work at the end of the day. That's what's going to drive success, is what is authentic to you as a leader. It's sustainable, as opposed to, as you mentioned, step 2, matching your ideas to everyone else's opinions. That's not sustainable. You will be changing constantly to be able to adapt, and it won't be aligned with your core personality traits, right? I love that.
I absolutely agree. And, there's, again, the pushback that sometimes I get is, well, you have to understand market trends and you have to adapt, because otherwise who's going to buy your services or your products? But there's a difference. There's a difference between understanding market trends and consistently updating and tweaking your offers. Because when you're updating and tweaking your offers, the main idea remains the same. It's like it's the essence of who you are, right? So the essence of who we are, our DNA doesn't change, but it may express itself differently, right? So this is exactly it. You create the DNA of your business, and it is based actually on the DNA of a leader. We just have to really understand what it is and which part of it we want to express. And then it's always a work in progress, clearly, because you do have to strategize how to sell whatever you created. But that's step 2.
I immediately found myself wanting to go to step 2 as well. And I'm sure you hear this with a lot of leaders. Like, my next question was going to be, all right, talk to me about the techniques that would help a leader translate their ideas to the external world. But I'm going to step back and ask you a different question. Help me understand, what are the specific techniques a leader can use first to understand what their ideas are, what's true for them?
Well, I think that there are just so many things to consider. And I think that the first thing to consider is that, well, first of all, do you have an idea or not yet, right? So if you do have an idea, then how does that idea make you feel? How does it make you feel? If you feel strongly about it, if you're passionate about it, if you believe in it, if it just like lights you up, then there's something to it. And then we can explore further. And another big question is why? Why do you think that this idea needs to exist? Right? Because if it exists because, well, you know what, I want to be famous, that's not good enough, right? That has nothing to do with the idea itself. So the idea itself needs to be the fuel that lights you up. And that fuel is connected. It must be connected to who you are. That's the connection that cannot be severed. This connection needs to be actually identified, because a lot of times it's not identified. So for instance, if you want to have a business that's full of adventure, so that has to fuel you. And the idea of adventure must be part of who you are. And then you have to dig deeper and understand, why is it part of who you are, right? Because the answers to those questions is going to be also the things that we're going to be basing strategies about how to make it appealing to those who will buy it. Because the whole idea of branding, so we're talking about branding and marketing now, the whole idea of that is to find people who are thinking and feeling like you. It's about finding your tribe. It's not about being liked by everyone. It's actually quite the opposite, right? Because if you stand out and you have a true brand, then you will have people who love you and people who don't care. And that's okay. That's the whole point, right?
Absolutely. I think being selective is so important. If you were to appeal to everyone, that would be insane a little bit, right? Like chaos in a lot of ways. And you hear that in any marketing 101 is like niche down. Don't have a target audience that's super broad. I love that you share like to dive into what connects you to your why, you have to explore. There's almost like this exploratory phase. What lights, to be able to find what lights you up. Do you find with other leaders when you're coaching them that that is probably the number one most important phase of like a coaching relationship or coaching engagement that you have, and does it take the longest? I've interviewed and also coached leaders that find almost like a pessimism around, well, nothing lights me up, I can't think of anything. So just talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, right. I mean, we have all kind of different people. And like I said, people come in or become leaders. Just because someone owns a business or even have an idea doesn't mean that they're a true leader, right? Because a leader means, in my opinion, is someone who can lead, someone who is worthy of following. There must be some things of substance to that individual that will compel other people to follow. And so there are some people who have had really good ideas and maybe they were really excited and maybe now they're tired. That's a possibility. And they're just thinking about leaving legacy and retiring. And maybe that's a completely different conversation because they're not starting their journey. They're kind of looking for exit strategy. So just like any coaching conversation, I think that one of the very first thing I ask my clients is, what do you want? Like, why are we here, me and you,
Yeah.
right?
What do you want out
What are
of
you
this?
looking to achieve through us coaching together? And then it becomes very clear. Like I want to rejuvenate our culture because people are kind of falling asleep. I'm not sure about what next product or service to use or whatever other issue that may be. But you and I, how many times we've seen companies that they have all of those things written out on their walls, vision, mission,
Value.
strategic plan every single year, and how many meetings may be devoted to that. And people are just like, God, another meeting, right? And then it just stays on the wall and it has zero impact on anyone. It just looks nice. These words on the wall remain on the wall and they're not alive because they don't have connection to the leader and to their vision, right? And so it has to be real. And if it's real, then when people look at these words, they actually mean something and it gets them going and gets them excited, right?
I see what you're
So
doing there. Yeah. So I love that connection you're making with leaders creating values and mission and vision that are connected to them, like taking it back full circle. If it is not genuine to you as a leader and you can't drive it with a why, then it will never be walked in your business. You won't walk the talk. It will just stay on your wall because it's not important. It's not connected to you. I love that. Thank you for sharing that like connection. I'm curious to hear, getting into the nitty-gritty of like actual tools or techniques, how a leader can get into this space of imagination, things like mental rehearsal. Are they effective?
well, I mean, we can actually think of a movie. So I think that all of us watch movies and love movies because it's just a really great pastime, right? And how many times you watch a movie and you think, why did they write that ending? It's just not satisfying. They should have wrote something different. Like how many times you say this to yourself? or even fantasizing what the ending could be, especially when it's like a series, right? And it's like you're watching one episode after the next and like, how is it all going to end? How's it all
I'm
going to
doing that
pan
right
out?
now with an audiobook I'm listening to. I'm like, why did she end it this way? Same.
Right? And so imagine this is your life. Imagine, because we're all kind of writing our own scripts. Yes, of course, there are things that are outside, the external influences clearly. But same thing when we're watching characters on the screen, right? So there are always these interrelationships and dynamics and whatever, right? And so I look at it as you can actually imagine something. You can imagine a different ending or different evolvement of something without any risk, because I already know my business. I know my business. I know who's around me. Like I know people that I work with. I know everything that needs to be done, everything that's already set, everything that still needs to be done, right? Whatever research needs to be made. I mean, it's all in my mind. And usually leaders do have lots of things in their heads, like simultaneously, right? Because there's a lot of balls in the air that you have to deal with all the time. And so knowing all of this, you can write a pretty good script because you know all the characters, right? You know all the characters. And it doesn't take a lot of time. So let's say I have, I don't know, a product or a different two ways that I want to go. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going left or if I want to go right. Like, I don't know. Well, okay, let's imagine, right? Let's just imagine this. We use this technique. Actually, as you said, mental rehearsal, it's so effective for decision making for anyone, not just for leaders, but just for anyone, like career choice or job choice or anything. But so, a leader wants to get something done or a vision that wants to be implemented, like it's tugging on his sleeve or her sleeve, saying, implement me, I want to be alive. And so you can kind of imagine what would happen. And you can imagine it one way, and it's important to assimilate into it. And what I mean by that, bring the future into the present moment, quite literally. So to feel the feelings, smell the smells, right? Whatever the smells are there. Are you outside or inside? What are you wearing? Who is around you, right? What's happening at the moment? To really have that client, that leader, to go through one day, of that vision mentally. And the amazing thing with imagery is that it takes very little time. So they're just going to usually close their eyes or just look at the ceiling and just literally take a couple of minutes, and you can experience a whole day within a few minutes, because we are like really magical creatures, but we just don't take charge of our own magic. Right? And so they visualize that, they assimilate it because it's kind of happening right now. The interesting thing about our body, our physiology, and our humanity is that we don't know the difference between what's actually happening and what we are imagining in terms of our physicality, because our body is going to respond the same way. Like if I can give you another example. If I'm going to ask you to pretend and imagine that you have a slice of lemon in your hand, a slice of lemon in your hand, right?
You said that I've already tasted it and I'm like, oh, sour.
Exactly. And you're salivating and you feel it sour in your gums, exactly. But like I'm not fooling anyone. Yeah. You're not fooling anyone. You know that there is no lemon and you can't help yourself. I can't help myself. I'm feeling it now too. And I'm doing this exercise, and so I'm feeling it too. And because this is how we are functioning. And this is why movies work, by the way, right? Because you watch a movie, something sad happens, you get sad. Something happy happens, you get happy. But you have to get emotionally involved. If the characters are not interesting, if the script is not there, you're just going to turn off TV or switch the channel, right? Or just, I don't know, fall asleep, right? And I think it's the same thing with the vision. If the leader doesn't have a good vision and it's not emotionally enticing, people are going to fall asleep, switch to a different channel, or, go to work for another company, or just like not be productive, not really care. It's the same thing, same idea.
Yeah.
And so if you
It's
have
like
two different
imagine a
things to
different outcome, right?
exactly. So, if you have two different things to compare, you feel it one day and then you go and you feel another option and you assimilate into that, associate into that associate fully your body, mind. And then you can come back and say, well, which ending did I like better? Which script did I like better? What experience is more of me? What is more sustainable for me? Because if the leader doesn't lead, who is going to lead? And I don't care how big the company is. Because when we're talking about a culture, company culture, we're talking about the culture of a leader. And then it goes and disseminates.
So powerful. When I think about leaders who are in high pressure situations, or they have to make a really tough decision, I love the idea of using this tool because, to your point, it is very low risk. It is no risk. You are literally just imagining what might it look like. On the flip side, if you're in a situation, even personally, let's like remove work, and you're just not feeling like your life is as vibrant as you'd like it to be, or you don't have the village of support that you want, imagine a different outcome. I also love the analogy of the movie. It's like, are you the main character in your movie today? Put yourself back in that frame and imagine what life you might live. Imagine what your business might do if you were to X, Y, Z. It's just such a powerful technique, is to like get into that space of imagination. But speaking of preparation, self-talk is another powerful, I think, often underutilized tool. We know that how we talk to ourselves can either propel us forward, and it can also kind of take us backwards. I'd love to get some advice from you for professionals that are maybe looking to transform that internal dialogue, that narrative that they have, to better support their career goals.
Well, that's another tool that we don't understand. Unfortunately, it's not taught in schools, even though it should be, right? But a lot of things are not taught in schools that should be taught in schools. But so we are taught to speak negatively to our children, to ourselves. This is the society that most people live in, and not just United States, Europe too. I mean, probably even more so than us, actually, right? And so in Asia, I mean, everywhere. And we grow up thinking the same thoughts to ourselves. So, and again, research finds that positive thinking creates the environment for you to achieve it. Like really, like understanding that it's wild. Just how you speak to yourself is creating the environment for you to actually make it happen or not. So usually people will say, like I say, what do you want? Our beginning of our conversation. And I can't tell you how many people start by describing what they don't want.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
Well, I don't want to be poor. I don't want to be tired anymore, or whatever other things. It's like, okay, thanks for sharing. That's nice. What do you want? Right? And so we go through this exercise actually, but this is how we speak to ourselves most of the time. Scientifically speaking, I mean, everything that we've done and have known for centuries is now is being proven by science. That's amazing to me because now we have all kind of ways of proving things. And so things that I've been teaching, I don't know, many, many years ago, like 40 years ago, now they're proven. There's a proof. So we think with imagination. We don't think with words. Words that don't create imagery are being ignored by our brain, quite literally. If I'm going to say to you, Kayshia, please do me a favor. Don't think of a baby with a mustache. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
I did.
Right? So the words don't do it they have no meaning. There's no imagery. But I gave you the image of a baby with a mustache, and that's it. You're probably going to dream it tonight.
Right into it. I ignored everything else you said, and that's all I could think about. Wow.
So can you imagine, no pun intended, if someone says to themselves, I don't want to be poor. So the images that come flooding, being poor. So you're programming yourself, your mind and body, exactly for what you don't want.
That's a
This
lot.
is how it works. This is how it works literally. It literally works like that, right? And so we have to retrain ourselves to say, well, what does it mean to actually have enough money, right? Some people feel awkward saying, I want to be rich. Well, you don't have to be rich to be happy. Well, how much money do you need to be happy, right? If we're talking about financial health, maybe those are the words. I want to be financially healthy. Or I want to be financially sustainable. If you're comfortable with saying, I want to be rich, and if you want to be rich, by all means, you have to feel truthful about it, right? You have to believe in what you're saying. You have to be able to imagine it. And because if it's too far-fetched, your subconscious mind is just going to reject.
100%. And our thoughts drive our emotions and then they drive our behaviors. So I love like the idea of replacing that scarcity term with something more abundant, more focused on what you want, because then your mood actually, your emotions might change, and then that'll change how you show up in the world.
Exactly. So what's going to happen if I say I want to be rich, and if I'm not comfortable with it, you're still going to see the images of someone being rich. So it's still better than saying, I don't want to be poor, but you're not going to see yourself being rich. You're going to see someone else because you can't really relate to it fully. That's what usually happens. But even that is better than, saying something mean to yourself, really. Or even on a smaller scale, like people who are running late. And they say, like, I don't want to be late anymore. Like I'm usually consistently late, and I just don't want to be late anymore. What are you seeing? You're seeing images of yourself being late in the past, right? Maybe in the future. It's like it's all about being late. But if you rephrase it to, I am from now on always on time. I am on time, or maybe a couple minutes early. You're seeing a very different picture.
Wow. If someone can't relate to something they're imagining, is there anything that they can do to get closer to that?
Yeah, rephrase it. Just simply rephrase it with something that you can relate to. Like we were talking about financial health, financial sustainability versus being rich, right? So you can always replace it with something that's more realistic for you. But clearly, like if I want to be 5'9" and I'm 5'1", it's not going to happen. Right? I can visualize all I want, but interestingly enough, if I say, I can say I carry myself as a tall person, and people will see me as such. I'm very small, but people always tell me, when they ask me, they say, and I tell them how tall I am. Like, really? I always thought you were like, because I carry myself tall, and so these things matter. And you can look at actors and actresses that you like, and actually look at their actual height. That you may be actually surprised.
Actually, I think I was surprised when I heard when I realized Bruno Mars was as short as he was. I didn't think he was that short. Side topic. I think that's such valuable guidance. Internal dialogue is just one part of the equation, though, right? I want us to think about now, like, let's bring this and translate that to the organizational level. Many companies unknowingly, and also due to the leaders that are operating those companies, operate from this place of scarcity. So they're competing for resources, for talent. How can leaders shift their mindset and foster a culture of abundance and collaboration within their organizations using some of the practices that you were talking about?
Yeah. Well, I mean, coaching does exactly that. Somewhere alongside with coaching back in the 70s, there was appreciative inquiry. I
Love
mean,
it.
it's still around, right? Appreciative inquiry, coaching, it's all about that. It's about feedback forward, right? It's about what works. It's about let's look at what works and what do we need to do to make it work, right? That becomes pragmatic, sustainable, and positive. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, we'll learn from mistakes. We do look at mistakes, but from position of learning. And versus let's not to do this, but what do we do instead? And actually, this is true for human behavior and for our habits, right? According to neuroscience, you can't just erase the habit, but you can start doing a new one. And then the old one is just simply going to be forgotten if you do something instead of it, right? It's the same thing with organization and the same thing with every single employee that is working for the company. So we don't have to necessarily explain neuroscience to our employees and to our managers, but just simply go with what do you want? And just ignore as many times as you hear what they don't want and just keep asking the same question. What do you want? What do you need? What must happen in order for us to move forward as a team
Mm.
and as a company? And so these type of conversations become extremely productive. And at that type of meeting, no one is going to fall asleep.
Right. I already feel more energized by that idea than talking about all the problems, talking about solving problems.
Yes, right. And so, but again, everything is under the umbrella of the company's culture. All of that comes from that head, so the leader, the DNA of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And then it disseminates into what it means. What does the company's culture mean? What is it? And then the company's culture is translated into all kind of ways that products and services are sold because they're going to be offered differently depending on that culture. And different types of customers or clients are going to be attracted to
Mm.
that service or product. I mean, it's just like 2 + 2 = 4, but I don't know how many people actually think that like that. It
Yeah,
doesn't
it's
have to be that complicated.
it's a trickle down effect too, right?
Completely. Yes, completely domino effect, trickle down effect. And I think that it's important to take care of all of those pieces. So there's a leadership team, and there's a team coaching that's becoming more and more popular right now, and individual coaching that has been popular and none of this is all that new, by the way, right? I mean,
Mhm.
it's already an accepted fact that it works. And it works exactly because it has a forward moving thinking.
Yeah, it's just finally getting the recognition it deserves.
Yes, it's forward moving thinking. And it also invites people to think for themselves versus just kind of listening to what they need to do. I mean, it's good to have consultants, it's good to have different options, but you have to be the person who decides what you like, what you don't like, how you want your everyday to be, what face you want your company to have, because that face is a mirror of your face.
Yeah, I think coaching is so powerful for leaders on an ongoing, continuous basis. Not something you do like, yes, there are those intervention types, but I strongly believe that, especially at the executive level, equipping your executive leaders with coaches is super important. And I want to touch on appreciative inquiry that you just so lightly dropped into the conversation because it's such a powerful tool that yourself and I are super familiar with. But if you're a leader and you're listening, you're like, what is that? It's AI, appreciative inquiry, not the AI you're thinking, artificial intelligence. It's a method that coaches or organization development practitioners can use to kind of get you thinking about that forward movement and that vision, right? It's about asking questions to help people think through what are working, what are our strengths, what are the opportunities that we have. I also think about the SWOT versus SOAR model. So the SOAR is that positive, appreciative approach to a SWOT. It's instead of looking at the weaknesses, you're looking at what are our strengths, what are the advantages of our business, and really help people understand how we can make positive progress. So I just wanted to share that. I think it's such a powerful tool. And if you've got a coach that can do it on an individual, but also facilitate it through the teams, so powerful.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I think that coaching is almost like they're like twins. Appreciative inquiry and coaching, they're twins in my opinion, the way I see it, because coaching is completely and totally forward moving and based on learning from mistakes and moving forward, right? And even questions like we were talking about mental rehearsal, right? And so even questions like, what would it look like? The one that you asked, you asked it, Kayshia, right? So that is a very typical coaching question. What would it look like? That question is based in curiosity, but also positivity and future orientation. And it does include imagination. How can you think of a future without imagining something?
Yeah, I sneak those questions in with any leader that I'm working with, even if it's not a formal coaching engagement. If they come to me with a problem, my immediate thought is, what does the ideal situation look like for you in this? What does success look like for you? Just to kind of and without realizing it, they are starting to imagine, right? They're using that imagination that so often gets just pushed to the side in the quote unquote business world. So super powerful. I also want to talk on a related note around leaders' expectations and how they shape team performance. Can you share a little bit about how self-fulfilling prophecies play out, let's say in workplace dynamics, and what are some practices that leaders can adopt so that it maintains and sustains positive outcomes?
Yes, well, there are a couple of things actually that I want to, like, we have time to for me to share. Well, number one thing is your expectation, the attitude. We don't really understand the like how much it weighs on
Mm.
the outcomes. I was teaching a class at NYU interpersonal communication skills like a long time ago, and I came up with this exercise, and I still do it with teams sometimes. Like I break people in couples, in pairs, and I say, well, imagine that one of you is a homeowner, your neighbors, like you both neighbors, and one of you is going to come and just ask to borrow milk, right? And so very simple, something basic. And so the person who is asking to borrow milk doesn't know anything, doesn't think anything, And the person who is opening the door, I say to them, well, you're opening the door. I want you to know that your neighbor had just been released from prison.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not someone that you really want to get friendly with. How are you going to open the door? And so, and the person who is asking for milk, just very, may I borrow some, hi, how are you? May I borrow some milk? And the response is very different, even though I tell them to smile and say, yes, sure. Just do. So they have a script, right? But
Yeah.
how they feel about it, what they're picking up from each other is very different. And then I do the second version where I say, okay, now do the same exact words. And now this neighbor also just moved in recently, and they're someone famous, and you really want to get to know them more, right? And so, but the person who's asking for milk doesn't know anything. Like they wouldn't tell them those different things. And then we ask them, how the same words were used, you still got your milk, right? What did you feel? And they pick up on all of that stuff. I mean, they don't know exactly what the
Hostile
thoughts were,
versus,
right?
yeah.
And so when we're working in the team, the team is focused on the whole idea of a team, that there's a common project, there's a common goal, there's a common purpose for the team to exist, right? So there's a lot of interdependency. So if I'm asking you to do something, if I'm asking you about the progress on something, and you hate me, or you don't trust me, or whatever, right? So even if you give me the response that I'm looking for, it's going to impact our relationship the way you do it. And excuse me. And even when you are listening for the request, you're going to be either suspicious about the request because you don't trust that person and thinking, why is she asking me for that? Like, really? What's really behind that? Or how many times is she going to ask me for the same thing or whatever else, right? Or it's like so annoying, whatever negative thoughts that could be. Or versus really, that's no problem. Okay, I'm hoping that it's going to be helpful or whatever, right? So the attitude means how people are going to be responding to each other and work together as a team. So that's number one thing we kind of go through, which is establishing trust. Because without trust, you can't move forward. Now, the second thing that may be surprising that I do cover is that you don't have to like each other.
Right.
You don't have to like each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's great. It's absolutely amazing when team members love each other, support each other in everything, like to hang out and have beers together and eat pizza or whatever. It's amazing, right? On retreats and whatever, outings. But realistically speaking, not every team and not every member in the team is going to like each other. And I think that it's not a reasonable request. But a reasonable request is, how can you be human, respectful, and work together productively? So at the very least, you can be neutral. Take emotions out of it. You're not marrying them, right? You're not living with them. They don't have to be your friends. You don't have to hang out after work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's about how can you be productive and neutral without putting some negative ideas and thoughts and attitudes before you're being asked something.
And just like a basic foundation of respect, right? Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's just back to treat other people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah, like a human.
Like a human.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I love that. Well, thank you so much, Mariana, for all those amazing insights. Would you like to share anything else with listeners today?
I really enjoyed our episode today. Thank you so much for having me. If any organization is looking to implement coaching culture, or a leader who may be looking to implement their vision, or if anyone wants to learn coaching skills, then please go to our website and book a meeting personally with me.
For anyone listening that's interested in contacting Mariana, be sure to check out the show notes with all of the details and links. Well, thank you, Mariana, for such profound insights. Your expertise, I feel like, just illuminates how powerful our inner narratives are, but also the visualizations, like how powerful they can be in shaping our personal lives and the organizations that we lead, but also that we work within. For our listeners, I really hope you can take away actionable strategies to harness the power of your mind to help you create that success and that abundance in your envision. For anyone listening that's interested in contacting Mariana, be sure to check out the show notes with all of the details and links. And until next time, thank you so much, Mariana. I really, really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too. Thank you, Kayshia.